Welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be the first of a series of reviews of light fixtures, and I've chosen a light that I'm quite interested in. So this is a light I think people are sleeping on. So this is the Kelvin Epos 300 and it's an award winner. So this is won the Red Dot Award, and they've recently just announced a 600 watt version of this, and they also have the Kelvin Play, which is one of the first of an RGB ACL small kind of panel. These are RGB ACL COBs, and the whole lineup is all ACL, so that's that amber, cyan and lime chipset, which is similar to what you see in the DMD Dash and also in the Pro Light. So this fixture really intrigues me. One, from a design perspective, I think it's designed fantastically, and that's up for debate, you know, it's subjective, but I think it's really stylishly designed. It's designed in Norway, so it's got that Scandinavian kind of vibe to it. The build of it is incredibly sturdy, so it's 6mm aluminium all around the outside of the body, and it's got some really interesting features such as a safety clamp which is embedded in the side of the ballast, which you push to be able to release, which then allows you to clamp it to a stand, which I think is pretty cool. But the thing that really intrigues me about this the most is the photometrics, and I've done 30 different tests on this for a range of different parameters using the Sekonic C800 just to see how accurate this is. I'm a strong believer that RGB ACL is one of the best technologies in terms of color fidelity out there, so what I wanted to do is now get these results into the computer, go through them and kind of give you a bit of an overview of this product and the photometrics. So let's go jump in front of a computer and show you what it looks like. So I've now been able to compile all the data, and I can look at the photometrics and give my honest opinion of how well this light has performed. But before I started to do that, I wanted to talk about some of the key features that this product boasts. So first of all, it's a Red Dot winner, and it's a Red Dot winner for innovation, which is a really well recognized kind of award. And I think it does massively innovate. In terms of design, it definitely innovates. It looks very different from everything else that's on the market. And it also has quite a few features that other products don't have. So I think that's quite innovative in that sense too. So it's an RGBLAC 300 watt COB. So RGBLAC is red, green, blue, lime, amber and cyan, or amber, cyan, lime in whatever order. It's a COB system, so it's a high powered LED system, something that people are being used to seeing all the time. They're kind of the most dominant light in the industry at the minute. It's designed and built in Norway, so it's got that Scandinavian vibe to it, and it's also going to be built very good quality, I think, in terms of how they produce stuff in places like that. It's smaller runs of products rather than a massive factory in the Far East that produce hundreds of thousands. This is smaller runs of product, so in terms of that, it's probably easier to maintain quality. So it's built exceptionally well. It comes with a 3-year warranty, which is great. Also comes with a heavy duty roller case, and I think the case is fantastic. Really well compartmentized, and it protects the product in transit, and it's super robust. So in terms of like a rental proposition, I definitely think the case is good enough to stand up to rental. It has a touchscreen control menu, which is great, not often seen on COB lights, but it's also super responsive. So it's great having touchscreen, but if it's not very responsive, then that's poor. But from my experience from using it, touchscreen is really great in terms of use. The body around it is 6mm aluminium, and that kind of like pushes into the design aspect of it as well. So you can see it looks super robust. It's kind of got a bit of a retro vibe to it, and it's made of really high quality metal. That does add to the weight, so I think it's around about 8.6 kilos or something like that in terms of overall weight of the head. But you know, that's kind of like a way off. Do you want it built very well and slightly heavy, or built not so well and slightly light? One of the other things I really like about this is an inbuilt clamp pin. So basically the pin that we'd use to mount the ballast to a stand is built inside the body of the ballast, and all you do is you push it, and that basically will push it out, or you push it in to then hide it, which I think is really good. The only negative I found is where the pin is mounted at the top. If you then hold it into a super clamp, basically the bottom sags slightly, so you could put like some folded up cardboard or something along those lines just to keep them aligned, so the pin is alignment with the base of the ballast, because otherwise as you move it on a stand with wheels, it's going to bounce and stuff like that. So that would be my only kind of like sort of negative about that design. I think it needs to be a bit more robust at the bottom to stop any movement. So one of the other things as well, it has cable management. So on the yoke, it's basically got a cable management system. So in terms of like when you put it on a stand, if you've got loads of cable left over, kind of got to wrap it around itself and use a little bit of Velcro. Not great. So you can actually use this to mount around the head. And I just think it makes it easier to manage your cables, and it's a great feature to have. There's another feature in there that I think I really enjoy, and it has these magnetic diffusion discs. So In terms of if you look at the COBs you can have them exposed, so little tiny LEDs, you can have the 80 of them exposed if you want, or you can stick a magnetic disc in front of it. Now those magnetic discs have different properties, so you can have one that's slightly domed, which will give you a slightly different beam angle, one that's magnified, one that's diffusion. So if you wanted to, you could use those as modifiers themselves without the hard reflector, or you could combine them with the hard reflector and this to be able to get kind of like different combinations in terms of control and a light, which I think is a great feature to have. And also with RGBLAC, you sometimes have power loss because you don't have that white in there. So being able to have a disc that sits on the front that amplifies it a little bit more, you know, it gives you a little bit more control and a bit more bang for buck out of your LAC system. As I said, there's 80 LEDs in there, and those LEDs can go up in 0.01 increments and also go down in 0.01 increments. So you've got really finite control over the different controls of it. The beam angle is 93 degrees, but when you use the hard reflector, it's 55 degrees. So if you take the hard reflector off, take the magnetic dome off, it's 93 degrees. And then when you start to use those magnetic disc diffusers, they change the degree angle depending on what one you're using. In terms of the Kelvin range, it's 1,700 Kelvin all the way through to 20,000. So an extended CCT range, which is fantastic. The CRI is 98, and I found that massively consistent throughout all the testing I've done. The TLCI is 98, and again I found that massively consistent throughout. The SSI, so tungsten, so 3,200. And then the SSI to daylight, which is 6,500 it should be, comes in at 74, which is really admirable statistics for an RGBLAC COB light. One of the other things I really like about this fixture as well is you can select the color space in terms of what you are adjusting the light to. So if you wanted to, you could do Rec 2020, or you can do sRGB. You can choose a color space basically, and then each of those color spaces are slightly different in terms of the colors that they can replicate. And if you are using Rec 2020 and then sRGB, you know, different parameters will give you slightly different colors based on what the camera's doing and based on what the light's doing. So the ability to define the color space is a really great feature. You've also got the ability to adjust the delta UV, so you can adjust the tint basically, so whatever color you go to within the CCT range, if there's slight shifts, you can then adjust those to get it more accurate. And I tested those and they've done fantastically well. And then you can also do, so in terms of when you're adding colors and laying colors, you do it based on a white light base. So you choose your white point, and that could be 3,200, 5,600, 6,200, you know, 10,000, whatever that is within that extended CCT range, and then you can mix colors on top of that, which gives you, you know, masses of more options in terms of the colors that are accessible. So all of those features really make this product stand out. Now I wanted to go into the photometrics. I've done 30 different tests. I'm going to bring up some slides basically to show you what those tests look like. I'm not going to go into all of them, but what I've done is I've picked out some key little elements that I think were worth talking about. So the first slide is based on testing in the CCT mode. What I did is I did a test at 100, then I did a test at 50, then I did a test at 10%. So the first thing I was going to bring up on this screen now is if we look at test number 1, you can see the spectral distribution over here on the right, which is this guy here. And you know, if you look at the stats are pretty good. So at 100% intensity, 1,700 CCT, it actually came in at 1,740, which is pretty impressive. I didn't adjust the delta UV, and it was pretty accurate in that. It was like 0.015, so it's very accurate. In terms of lux, 1,220 lux, CRI 97, TLCI 90, TM30, so render 92, and then saturation was 92. So these are really good stats at 100%. Because it's an RGBLAC fixture, you can honestly test this forever. You could test absolutely every parameter on there and it would take forever to do that. So I just done 30 tests that I think will give a really kind of clear overview of how well this light performs. So one of the other things I wanted to show you here on this graph, or sort of this presentation, or this slide, is if you look at test 4, the tint. So basically test 4 I did at minus 27, and it actually came in, so minus 0.0270, and it actually came in minus 0.0256, which is incredibly close. And then I done it at plus. Plus was slightly out, but we're talking in terms of out, we're like 1/8 of a gel correction, you know, very little difference in terms of how significantly this is out. So very impressive. Then we move on to the next slide, which is testing at 3,200 Kelvin. So look at test number 6. Test number 6, basically, we had 3200 Kelvin is what we set on the fixture. It actually came in at 3254, so not massively out. I'd be happy with that. In terms of the accuracy on the delta UV, it was 0.0019 out, which is just shy of a 1/8 gel correction. So, you know, it's very good in that sense. In terms of the lux output, 2410, and then those CRI 98, TLCI 99, TM30 render 96, and then saturation 100. So those stats at 3200 are really, really, really good stats. You can also see the spectral distribution over here. You can see that blue LED coming in a little bit, so you get a little spike there, but it's managed really well throughout that distribution. And then if we look at the CRI, you can see in terms of where it's down, is it down in blue, so R12, or sort of not blue, like dark blue, R12 it's down, but everywhere else is pretty acceptable. And then when we look at the sort of the tint, you can see that's way over to the left-hand side for test number 6. And you can see in terms of the adjustments here, if I look at test number 10, so at 100%, 3200 Kelvin, came in 3277, so not massively off. And then we've done a plus adjustment of 0270, came in at 0296, so not far off at all. So yeah, just give you an idea, but did significantly lose some lux output. There's a difference, you know, from as you adjust those parameters. Then when we look at 5600, so daylight, if we look at test number 1 is the one I'm going to pick. So we chose 5600 as the CCT. It actually came in at 5594. So not far off that at all. And then again, if we look at test number 1, if we go down to the bottom right hand graph, if we look at how that performs versus daylight, so the reference CCT is 5600 Kelvin. That is bang on the middle, which is pretty impressive. Well, very, very, very impressive. And you can see here, if we look at the CRI, kind of how those colours are split, again, R12 is slightly down, but everything else looks pretty good. Feel free as well at any point to just pause this video, look over these stats. They were all done with the Sekonic C800, tested at 3 meters from point in a darkened room in my garage where I can control all the parameters. So this is as accurate as I can get in terms of the testing parameters. Then let's move into the next slide. So this was tested at 10,000 CCT. So if we look at test number 16, you can see down at the bottom right hand side, the blue is massively high. We would expect to see that because this is a more sort of blue end of the line. And then in terms of our RF and our RA, so sort of the TM30, we got a 91 and we got a 99. So 91 for render, 91 for render and 99 for saturation. So really good stats. One of the other things I wanted to point out as well is if we look at test number 20, so what I basically did is I set the tint, so the delta UV, so I set it at plus 0.027, and the results I got were plus 0.2069. So I'm talking like one point out, which is pretty impressive. So in terms of accuracy, this thing is showing me, look, it's super accurate and really impressive in terms of trying to put this to work on set amongst other lights. And we move to the next slide. So after I tested it in CCT mode, I then swapped it into the RGB mode. And what I wanted to do in the RGB mode is just make sure that it is using those single diodes as opposed to a mixture of colors to try and get better output or better results. So if we're using the red, for instance, we want to see that, you know, that's going to be it should be as accurate to red as possible without other colors coming in. If we use green, if we use blue, and I think we can see that if we look across here. So red, you know, hardly any other colors come through, slight green, but nothing too much, a little bit of blue coming through down here, but mainly red. If we look at the green, you know, really well spiked to solely just the green, and then the blue is the same. And if we look at that in terms of like our hues, in terms of, you know, what coordinates that would be on a 360 color wheel. So red should be 0 or 360. It came in at 3 degrees, so 3 points out, which is pretty impressive. If we then look at the green, so it came in 120 degrees, which is bang on. And then if we look at the blue, comes in 100 to 240, again, which is bang on. And then in terms of the lux output, obviously there's not a blend of colors, so the lux are going to be significantly lower. But 3 meters, when you're using colored light, 300 odd lux is not bad going. Like, it's going to throw a wash of color pretty well in a dark environment. And then from there, after we've done the RGB testing, what I wanted to do is see how the RGB fares up against the HSI. So if we look at the difference between these two slides, so this is using the RGB. If we then move into the HSI, you can start to see those other colours coming into play. So blue and green look significantly different as we swap between the two of them, and then red you see a little bit of blue coming in. But if we look across the stats, so in terms of how accurate it is, if we look at red, came in at 6 degrees where it should be 0 or 360. If we look at green, should be 120 but came in 100. If we look at blue, it was bang on again, and that's predominantly because most LEDs are blue in life, and then they're covered with a phosphorus which allows them to make other colours, so blue should be pretty accurate. That comes in at 240, no surprise. If we look at amber, so it came in at 52 degrees when it should be 44.9. If we then look at cyan, coming 186 degrees, it should be 180. So that is pretty impressive in terms of that colour replication. And then we've obviously got lime down the bottom, which is 120 degrees minus 40% basically, or sort of like, yeah, it should go down to 60s saturation. Performed slightly off there, but still pretty good in my opinion. But yeah, you can see those spectral distributions are different between the RGB mode and the HSI mode, which is great to see. And then finally, the last thing that I did is I tested the XY coordinates, and I tested those versus D65. And what I wanted to do is to see how accurate I could adjust the XY coordinates on the light and how that would replicate when I was testing. So if we look at what I set here, so X for D65 should be 0.313, and that's X, and then Y should be 0.329. The results I got was 0.314 and 0.334, which is not far off at all. So pretty impressive in terms of its accuracy when using X and Y modes, which I thought was pretty impressive. In terms of my thoughts about this product, I think it's massively innovative in terms of its design. It's got some great features that allow it to be put to work as an owner-operator, or also if you're putting it out for rental as well. It's got some phenomenal photometrics as well, and I just think it's one of those products that lots of people are sleeping on, and hopefully this video puts it to the attention of the world. And I can't wait to see the likes of people like Andrew Locke and Luke and John from Gaffer Salon basically doing a video on a product like this, because it's an absolute champion, and I think more people need to be aware of it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions about any of the testing or anything about Light, please do pop them down in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you've just found this channel and you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. If you've got any questions about the testing that I've done on this product, please do leave them down below in the comments and I'll be happy to answer. I'm looking forward to see this product get into more people's hands out there and seeing more reviews on it, because I do think it's a really great product. It's massively innovative, and it has some great photometrics to go alongside of it. There's nothing worse than having a light that sings and shouts about what it can do, looks fantastic, and then when you put it to work, it just fails to deliver. And I think this light looks fantastic, it's robust enough to be put to work, and it's going to deliver when you do put it to work. So all in all, a great product. Well done to the guys at Kelvin. Looking forward to seeing the Epos 600, which has just been announced, because if there's anything to go on what the 300 can do, I think that light's going to be a winner. Until next time, take care.